Hello, welcome everyone to the breakdown. We are your hosts, Tanya Lee and Johanna Burkhart. This is
Hey,
episode
hey.
120. 120.
God, it's been a long 120 episodes, huh?
With a couple of breaks in between. Just a
So,
couple, right?
just a couple, but shit happens. So,
It does. We wanted to talk tonight about Dark Night of the Soul. And the reason this came about was, as you are well aware, last week, Johanna had perfectly defined it as some spiritual maintenance that was needed. And I'm going to be putting myself out there because that spiritual maintenance was me. And I approached Johanna this week saying, because we are pretty on the fly when it comes to the episodes of what we're going to talk to next. We do some planning for our guests and so forth, but we didn't have anything planned. And I said, I feel like we need to talk about the dark night of the soul because what I've been going through had reminded me of some of the things that when I first experienced this, what I'm going through now. So old shit is coming back up. And that's why I wanted to really hit upon that and to I know it's not something, for people who are like, what is the dark night of soul? I don't even know what that means. So just to break down it in clarity, it's not something that is straight on depression or anxiety. It's more than that. This is um, a definition of someone who, people have said it's grievance, it's ego death, it's anguish, purgatory, hell on earth, a spiritual depression, losing your fucking mind. All of those, whatever term you want to put on it, but really it's about coming crashing down to the bottom, to the absolute bottom. And I mean, you're physically at the bottom, you are on the ground. And when you hit that moment, it's not just I'm full of anxiety and depression. It's you're questioning everything. You're questioning beliefs. You're questioning why I'm here. Where's my home? What's going on? It's a cluster. It's not just one thing. It's not just one thing. Is there
and I
anything
don't
else?
feel well. I've written a lot of articles on this and done a lot of
Sure.
lives on this because I went through it twice in big chunks. So, the Dark Knight it is in sense it's it's mistaken often for depression. I want to say that it's
Yeah.
often mistaken for depression. But what you were describing usually is the point of which when you hit rock bottom, when you hit that low, is usually about when the miracle occurs. But
Mm.
up until that point, you are in a really low state, like you stated. Um, but I have a completely different take on the Dark Night of the Soul, which we'll talk
Mhm.
about, which is what I've written most of my articles on because
Right.
it's how I've been shown. But that's the point. Like you spend just a really long time in that state, and but when you reach that point of like no return, that very rock bottom, it's usually about when the miracle is going to occur.
Yeah, because there's no way to go other than up.
Right.
There's no way to go other than up. And some people go, well, how long does this last? How long? Listen, how long are you going to work on it? I mean, it's layers. I mean, you're as long as you keep trying and keep going, you might fall down a little bit, but the more awake and aware you are of the things that are happening to you, it's easier to get out of certain states
Yeah.
um, than when you were first down there.
Yeah, for me it was what my guidance has been is the more you allow for this process to be and don't fight it, the faster it moves. Because it is a space of dormancy, a space that actually is going to benefit you because it's essentially resetting you. It's allowing you a time to allow the things that the beliefs, the layers, the skin that's shedding off of the snake, right?
Right.
It's that it's that void, that time where it's meant to be dark. It's like if you get to go into inside of it's supposed to be a time where you go within you and find peace and acceptance within you and you allow all the beliefs and all the layers to fall away. The problem is we are so conditioned to believe that we have to force and fix and make everything better and find the reason and just get better already, that we don't take that time to come into that complete acceptance of where we are in that moment and find peace within it.
Right.
Had I had done that, I probably wouldn't have gone through it twice, and I probably wouldn't have lasted 8 to 10 months both times.
And it's funny because when I was hitting this bout of it last week, and I was like, I think I'm hitting the dark night of the soul again. I'm like, is it possible I'm hitting this again? And I was talking to Johanna because Johanna had said she'd gone through it twice, and I'm like, listen, I think I'm going through it again. I think this is what's happening. But today I can tell you is the best I felt in a couple of weeks. Now, this is not something that's, all of a sudden I'm happy, hunky dory, everything's okay. But like I said, it's a lot easier when you become aware of certain things that you can get out of it a lot quicker. And that's what happened to me this morning. I just snapped and certain things came in perspective of, so how this came about of what was happening to me. My first awakening experience, my whole world was inauthentic. I was not my authentic self. And because of that, my body started to shut down with an autoimmune disease. And it was something that was emotional, and it affected my skin and affected everything, from me getting other sicknesses. I've been picked and probed and, God knows what. And it took me over 4 years to really know and define my body as a map, to know what feelings are and what they came up and what that meant. And when a couple of weeks ago, I had a big moment of wanting to progress through some of these fears I'm going through. I'm in a temporary spot in my life. I'm very temporary. I've been very open about it. I do my vlog about it. But one of the things that I had stated was that, in order to get through something is just to do it. And I am leading by example now. So I feel like I'm putting myself out there. I have to start doing shit. I'm now being put in the light of like, okay, well, you're leading by example. And that can get a lot of pressure, and I was feeling that. I was feeling that tremendously. And I had decided to finally publicly come out that I was moving and relocating. And it was not, a lot of my family knew, but, with friends and relationships, it was a big deal. This is not something where I'm, stationed in New Jersey. I'm moving to a completely different state, as a completely different environment. And I started to listen a lot to people telling me how impossible it was, or, you should do this, you should do that. So I started getting a lot of opinions, and especially when it was affecting my finances and so forth. And this is something I struggled with because, I had to face my finances. So, and all of this started coming in, and I just kept telling myself, well, I'm fine. I'll just get through this. I'm fine. I'm fine. And I was doing the same steps that I was doing. And my first time was ignoring that I was not fine. I was not fine. And it was to the point where it was affecting not just me, but it was affecting relationships. And I was looking for someone to talk to. And the person I had expectations to talk to wasn't there. And everybody who was there, I was pushing away because I was like in this codependent state of wanting that person there. And what happened with me is my body started to shut down, and I got sick, and I took it as, um, I had taken, it was a normal day. I had a fine, it was just a normal work day and so forth. I felt okay. And I had my roommate had bought this water, and I had drank the sparkling water, and I don't know, I got sick from that sparkling water, and I was purging and purging and purging. I have not been that sick since the day I didn't want to be here, which was 4.5 years ago. I mean, it was bad. It was bad. And, I'm lucky that I have people like Johanna in my life who, checked on me but didn't push me, because I think it's really important to bring it out when somebody is going through something and you absolutely know something's going on, but they're not saying something or something's off, is to hold that space for them. And if they're not ready to talk for it, or if they're saying they're fine, just let them talk or say what they have to say, because most of the time they'll open up when they feel like it. And I had to put that in reference to the relationships I was having with the people who weren't there, that they may be going through something too, and putting that in perspective. So this was all stuff that started hitting me. And what the switch was this morning is, I woke up and I went, all of the things that I have been saying to myself for the past 4 years and practicing, I just put down the drain with my manifestations of all this negative vibration shit of making this impossible being not possible, and listening so much to what other people think. And that is not what I want to do anymore. I don't want to do that. I can appreciate people and telling them what they want me to do or what they think. But it doesn't mean I have to do it. Doesn't mean I have to take their advice or do something, but just, know that what's authentic to me. And that's what's scary, is because sometimes I don't know what's authentic to me. And I'm almost 42. you know? So anyone can be in this stage, and it can be with anything. It can be with anything. So that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I felt like, and I don't know how, Johanna, you felt when you went through this, but especially the second time, and you've been so open with telling people this experience and being transparent, that you feel the need to let people know, just so that they don't feel alone, because it is very isolating.
Well, for me, I'll tell you, the reason why I shared it so much is because um, I wore the mask and I wore it fucking really well,
Yeah.
because there was like 3 people in my life the second time that knew how bad I was. I was on antidepressants, I was on anti-anxiety medicine. And what sparked this was when my father died, all of that year, that 2015, that's when my extrasensory abilities came online, is what I call it. They
Yeah.
opened up. And for my whole life, any emotions that I had, I didn't grieve when my grandmother died. I had all kinds of, the sad sob stories about our childhood and yada, yada, yada. Well, I just pushed all that shit down to the
Mhm.
point to where everybody used to tell me how strong I was. And, that, like, you're so amazing, like nothing bothers you. You just keep on going. Well, I wore that mask really well. I've
Yeah.
had to be
Me
dependent on
too.
myself. I didn't have anybody that had my back as a child. I had no one to hold space for me. I had no one that was
Mm.
looking out for my best interest. And so when I went through this, I just did what I knew to do, which was to shut down. So literally, we would go places, me and my husband would go places that I would have to show up to, right? Because I didn't want to go anywhere. So
Mm.
I would be like, hi, and I'd be talking, and inside I'd be like, shut the F up. I don't want to talk to you. And we'd get in the car and I'd be like, bleh, and I would just like ego
Uh-huh.
vomit. And my husband would be like, what the fuck is happening right now?
Yeah.
I was comfortable with him. I could be
Yeah.
myself and I could be in that miserable place. And there was many a times where my own husband would call me out and he'd be like, you're posting this positive shit on Facebook and you're showing up and doing these makeup things. And if I didn't have that, I probably would have been way worse off, but I had to like pretend that everything in life was okay. I mean,
Mhm.
I literally wore that mask well until the day where I couldn't do it anymore. And I was like, I have two
Yeah.
choices right now. I can die because that's what I wanted to do, or I'm going to have to get up and stop and put the mask down, because I literally, my body was like, you can't do this anymore. And
It shut down on you. It
it did.
literally shut
I
down. Your
mean,
body will shut down on you.
but that was my rock bottom, was the day I
Yeah.
said those words out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe. I think too, it's a good. You brought up a good point, and that's something that I also want to bring up. When you're going through this, a lot of past shit comes up,
Uh-huh.
a lot, because it's there for you to clear. And Johanna just gave an example of her father and so forth coming up. For me, I had a lot of stuff in my past come up. I had a little bit of a difference. I had support. I had a lot of support within my family.
It was just that I didn't know how to make my own decisions because I was afraid to make certain things of looking certain way. Because I had the good girl, um, expectation on there, which is, an old belief. So it was more fear based on there. It was like almost a thing of like, don't do that. It's hot. Don't touch that. It's hot. Like I was never the person who would touch anything. That's what they told me. It's hot. Then I have to believe that. I had a lot of this fear base, and it wasn't anything, bad. It's just as a parent, that's, something you do. So I had a little bit of a different aspect on there. But, what came up for me in this one, for this bout, because you always will find a core item when you go through this journey of what it is you need to clear. Like you can break down things over and over and over again. It always comes down to these core items. And for me, it's rejection and abandonment. I have huge fears with that. And I was like hitting that really big, through these past weeks. And, what kept coming up was actually, which is, weird, but not weird because it's something that had to be cleared, was my best friend, my childhood best friend. She's passed away. She had passed away in her 20s, and very tragic. But it wasn't a quick pass away. She was comatose for almost, I would say, 3 or 4 years, and might be changing that a little bit, but I think it's about that around. But during that thing that came up was when Tanya and I, we were childhood friends, but we were so opposite. And her name was Tanya. And we were extremely opposite, right? And we were extremely opposite, but we had a lot of parallels in our lives. Both our families, like we were, both had the same amount of siblings. We had come from families that were divorced. We just were both ethnics. Her family was Egyptian, mine was German. Like we just had all these parallels, but we were very opposite. She was extremely tall, and I was like a
I love how
tomboy.
you call Germans ethnic. I'm German. Like, what is that about?
we were very ethnic. We're first generation ethnic.
Okay, all right.
And all. So, but what came about it is this thing where she would always say I would never listen to her. I would never listen. I was like, I listen. And when she had gone into a comatose, I would pray that she would talk to me. I'm like, I'm listening. And it was really a hard thing in my 20s to watch that, because you realize you lose your invincibility when you're young, when you lose someone that young. And that was coming up again because I wanted to talk, and I wanted someone to listen, and I wanted to listen to that for that person. And she came up so much, and then I realized, wow, like I really feel like I hear her all the time now. Always with me. And that's something that brought me joy in that sense. I'm like, well, I can still talk to even the people who don't want to talk to me, and I can still listen to them. It doesn't mean that I have to listen to them like right in like front of them talking to me, but I can still talk to their higher selves.
Yeah.
Right.
See, for me, my second one wasn't so much, I mean, it had a lot to do with my dad dying, but it was compounded by what happens to a lot of people that wake up, because we have to remember that there's probably 60% of people who are what we consider clairsentient. So a lot of people think that means that they're an empath, and they're way different, by the way. And that's a whole nother topic. But you end up feeling. So when my extrasensory gifts of that opened up, I was suddenly feeling every fear in the collective, every fear, all this excess energy. So I went from feeling completely shut down, no emotion, right? I buried everything, to like a Band-Aid, a hole ripped open. And it was like, I felt everything that wasn't fucking mine. And so I thought I was going crazy, because I'm like, oh my God, I am so afraid of literally everything. I was anxious. I had fears of God knows what. And so I went from this really strong, like badass chick to like, we're going to fucking die, or I'm going to go broke and bankrupt. You guys, I could have had millions of dollars in the account, and I thought I was going to go bankrupt because I was pulling in the collective's energy. There's another thing I wanted to talk about that you mentioned, and that we talked about before this, and that was the ego death and what
Yeah.
you're currently going through or coming out of. And the energy shift that we just had or are in the midst of, it's just about shifting right now. It was a 13,000 year collective for the planet, right? Clearing, and a 13-year in our life. If you think about the shit that you've done in the last 13 years, right? There's a lot that's going to come up. And the ego is just that part of our body or our brain, I should say, that's constantly running, that's wanting to keep us safe. It's wanting to protect us. It doesn't mean us any harm. And so, of course, this Tanya had just moved through these huge fears, and I'm listening to her tell me that she's sick, and I'm like, I already knew what was going on. Like, I'm already tapped into what's happening, but I'm just like, okay. But I'm like, you just confronted some big ass shit, sister. Like, now you got to purge all that shit that you were holding physically. Like, it has to go somewhere, because at this point she had manifested that holding these fears in her body. And so of course it's got to come out physically. Right.
Yeah.
But we go through these periods on a regular basis. We even do it with the moon cycles, where we have to go into this dark space, and it's not meant to be dark. But if you think about it, if you go inside of yourself, it's going to be dark until you realize you are the light, right? You don't need to turn the switch on. You are the light. And so the dark place, to me, and the way that they showed it to me, when obviously well after I was out of it, was the minute you found your power, you turned your light on and you were no longer dark.
Yeah.
Because the one that allows the power holds the power. So who are you giving your power to?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really, insightful way of putting it. And I think, when you think of like all of the changes that you go through, your body, because it's in protect mode, right? With your ego's there to protect you. So when you do things against your ego's like, no. And that's what my body was doing. It was like, I was physically getting ill because I was detaching from it, and my body didn't know how to handle it. But it forced me to feel. And it was something I was not, because I kept saying, I'm fine, I'm doing okay, I'm fine. And I wasn't addressing my feelings. Like, I know I have to address my feelings. I know.
Well, it's going to show up in your skin too.
It's going to show up on me.
You're like me. Our body's like, we're going to make you see this.
Yeah. So like, I knew I had to address it. I knew it. And the thing is, once you do it, once you feel, it dissipates. It does dissipate, but you have to go allow yourself to do that. And these are all lessons I knew, and I still got sick because you get back into that mind frame, you get back into that old programming, and it's still there. But like I said earlier, you can switch out of it a lot quicker than the first round when it hits you. But I mean, I was picking up everyone's shit. So I was just I was so not balanced.
Just like when we were talking about last time about signs and synchronicities, it's almost a magnetism. So if you are in that low vibrational space of victim, which you entered into for a hot minute, right? Because you're like, I just want to get better. I just want to get through this. I just want to feel better.
Yeah.
That's victim. And when you did that, you got down on that frequency with all those other people, and you started pulling that shit in. And it's like, no.
And every person I was running into, I was getting like, icky. Like there's certain things I like to do to try to escape from. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go play a video game. And I go to play the video game, and I'm playing with, a friend, and my energy was crap. And, he started talking, and I just felt like we were both crap. And I was like, I don't even want to play anymore. This isn't even fun for me anymore. And I just remember I took my ball and went home, and I was just thinking, this poor dude's probably like, what the fuck's wrong with her? But at the same time, I was like, my vibration's so fucking low right now, and I should not be like, because when somebody is talking about their day or they had a bad day and you're in bad vibration on there, you're just going to start sitting in that shit. Right. Like you can't bounce it off or anything like that if you're in an even lower vibration than that person. I was not helping that person at all.
No. And you will only attract, right? If you're in a low vibration, you're only gonna attracts it's only gonna run into more people who are in that space. And And, you know, so the one thing I do want to mention is I'm going to do a shameless plug right now, but just because it's called for. I'm getting ready to launch a course, and it's all about aligning with our ego, right? Because we go through these periods when I throughout my spiritual whatever trainings I've done with people, I've heard this over and over. It's the death of the ego. It's the death of the ego. Do you know what we're actually killing off here? Because we're not killing our ego. Our ego ain't going
You
anywhere.
can't kill the ego.
It's never dying, people. It's not going to happen. And nor do you want it to. What we were killing, what she was killing, what I was killing was the judgment of where the F we were. It is the judgment of the fear. It was the judgment of what we were going through, because that's it. When we strip the judgment away, it becomes just an event in our life that builds us. And so we strip that away, and that is the shedding of the skin, and it is the purging of our body. We're releasing that toxicity, that judgment. And so I've actually developed a hack that came through this month on how to hack the subconscious, the inner children, the ego, to align with your heart and put it to service and put it to use. Because so many people think that that's what we're doing right now as we shift into that divine feminine, is that we're killing off the masculine energy or the ego energy. And no, we're not doing that. No, we're coming into union with all parts and pieces of ourselves. That's what we're doing.
And becoming balanced.
Yeah. Because when you accept you did some shitty shit in your life, and when you accept that you beat yourself up, or that you didn't love yourself, or I spent years not loving myself. When you accept that, you take away the judgment of it, right? You don't have to like it, but you're not judging yourself. Because when you don't trust your intuition, when you don't trust yourself, then you are doubting who you are. And that's what we're doing when we're judging ourselves, is we are doubting who we are. We have to come back to, who are we? Because it isn't the labels that we give ourselves.
Right. Lynette on here said, it was like that for me, rock bottom, get to living or to dying. That's how I felt. I'm so glad I chose to live. The minute I surrendered, bam, my whole world changed.
Yeah, mine too.
It's true. Your whole world changes, because all of a sudden it's almost like you don't give a fuck, but at the same level, you're open to just trying new things. And like, I don't know, like it just, once you start getting in that idea of being open and exploring things, then like this whole new perception comes in play. Everything, like colors become different, like the environment becomes different.
And not to say like the next day you're just better.
No.
Right? You still have to do the work. It's still, but you, at that point, you're now stepping into choosing to do the work. That's the difference.
So I want to point out what triggers the dark night of the soul, because there are a couple of different things that we've all read to some extent, but I think we should bring that out for people who are new to it. Whether it's these all life traumas that happen. They just examples. You can have a life death experience. You could have something like a life trauma, like a divorce, something major that shifts in your environment. You can have, a health issue. You can get triggered by some people. I guess it's also caused by what they consider the Kundalini awakening too. When you have a shift in perception and, beliefs. Other things that can trigger it are twin flame activations. A particular person that mirrors you and you have that connection with can trigger things that bring up in your life. What else, Johanna?
It can be just it can be anything. My first one, there was no big major life event. It's just one day, nothing resonated anymore. It literally was like, I woke up one day and I was like, I don't believe this anymore. It doesn't resonate with me. My friends that I had, and I continued to have for a couple of years after that, didn't resonate for me anymore. Like everything just didn't resonate. And I didn't know what was happening. And I didn't know what to believe. And I didn't have a new belief. And I felt like I was just in this void. Right. And that was the dark night.
Too. You got sick.
Not the first one.
Not the first one. Okay.
No, not the first one. The first one I was, I just thought I was depressed. I gained a bunch of weight. I just kind of isolated myself from everyone. I quit taking care of myself. I
Yeah.
started having weird experiences. And, that's actually that's when I was waking up and I didn't know what was happening. And that was in 2011 to going into 2012. I had no idea what was happening to me, but I
Yeah.
was just super depressed. And, or so I thought. But when I look back now, I'm like, oh no, because that's when everything started to shift for me. Like but that's the best way I can describe it is it's like you spent your whole life, you've spent 30, let's just use this number, 30 years believing this one way of doing things. This is how we do things. This is how stuff is, blah, blah, blah. And one day you wake up and you're like, huh. And you start getting pissed or sad. It's one of the two. You get angry or sad, and that's what can happen. But the death of a family member, the loss of a pet, moving across country. God, there's a million and one things.
I feel like there's so many that can just like, it could be like the
Seeing,
littlest
see,
thing.
seeing a tragedy, like people who witnessed 9/11 happen, do you think about what they probably went through after that? Like those kinds of massive events. So even just
Mhm.
watching that on the news and tapping into that feeling, because when you watch the news, you're connecting to that energy, right? That can even do it. I mean, there's a million things that can happen.
Yeah. And it's I feel like it's not something you realize that all of a sudden you're like, I'm going through the dark night of the soul. I also find that when you start doing, when you become awake and start doing research on your own, things just start fall into place as to the terminology, or things come in place where someone will introduce something and you go, that kind of resonates, or what's that mean? I really didn't even know what an awakening was for like 2 years while I was into this. 'Cause I'm just like, I'm just making life changes. I don't know what that means. I still laugh when my friend came on and she's like, I think you're going through an awakening. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? I'm not a spiritual person. I'm not religious or anything like that. And as much as I can't say I wasn't spiritual, I was spiritual. But it wasn't something that I put so much heavy emphasis on. I was very open to certain things, but I closed off a lot of stuff because it's not taken serious, or people who like the woo woo are considered weird. And I was weird enough without the woo woo.
Right.
So it was like, I don't need to have that additional attention on me. But I also think age has a lot to do with it too. I think there's a point in your when you are at an age, you get comfortable to the point where you're just like, it is what it is. Like, I'm going through something. And, I guess, some people even consider, the term midlife crisis, and I think about that. And I go, you know what? I feel like midlife crisis is just an awakening for a lot of people,
It could be.
so
Yeah. I just think that there is, I've actually known some pretty young people who have gone through it. So I don't think every awakening has to start with a dark night of the soul, because it is a choice we make to
yeah.
accept what we're going through and what we're experiencing, or to sit into the resistance and go down the rabbit hole even deeper and deeper and deeper. Because honestly, there is a big difference between the depression and the dark night of the soul, and it really has to come down to, it's almost like when you're going through the dark night of the soul, one day you trusted yourself and you thought you knew who you were, and then one day you didn't, and you feel so lost and so powerless and so helpless, because everything that you thought you knew to be true is now questioned in your mind, and you enter into this deep state of doubt and confusion. And it is meant to be this beautiful window of time where you go inside and find yourself again. But rarely does anybody utilize it in that way, because they don't know what's happening. And so the
Hmm.
more and more we talk about this and say, when you enter into that moment in time where you start to question who you are and what's happening to you and feeling helpless and powerless, there is no better time than to completely go within to your space. And going within just means listening to your heartbeat, listening to your breath, asking, who am I? Opening yourself up to, there is something bigger, and not bigger than me, but I'm a part of something bigger. I'm not just this single person. I'm always supported. And it's just going and rediscovering yourself and your truth. When you're depressed, it's way different. It's not that you don't know who you are. It's you just don't care. I've just entered into this. I don't care. I just want to be, it's a totally different vibration.
It's self-centric. It's,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's like, you do definitely ask the bigger questions of like, what's the point? You know, like, what's the point of this? Like, what's going on? I do think that there's some philosophical like point of that, but I also feel like, you know, you had mentioned, you know, some of the younger people who are awake. I feel like those are a lot old souls who are just awake, like in young forms, because I've seen it too. I've seen a lot of young people who are very open. But you know, taking the spirituality out of it and just saying, you know, what is my life? What is this? That is still being awake. That's still, you know, if you're questioning that, or, you know, you're feeling out of place, and you're not being analytical about it, but you're observing and reflecting and bringing up past experiences. I feel like that's really the key to it, is when you see those past experiences come up, and maybe you can shift the light of what that past experience was. I know for me, I love playing victim, and I didn't, you know, that's not something that, you know, 4 years ago I would tell you. I would be like, no, I don't play victim. Nope, nope, nope.
Oh, I was the martyr. Big
I
time.
was always in that level of blaming, or like, what was me? What did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? What did I do? Blah, blah, blah. And like, you know, trying to put the blame on the other person
Because we
because they
deny
made
it
me
has
feel that
anything to do
way.
with us. There's
Yeah.
all that denial.
And, you know, because that makes us look bad,
Mhm.
you know, and, you know, to take, ownership of your shit, which, you know, Johanna and I are always.
Because we almost made, well, I did make t-shirts, but nobody
Mhm.
bought them.
Well, I was gonna buy it, but then you took it off so quickly. I think there was like 5 days or something. Maybe it was on a little longer,
You
but
got 5 days to buy your own shit t-shirt with a poop emoji.
I was gonna buy it, and then I'm like, "Where is it?" And you're like, "No one bought it. It's off the store." I'm like, "Ah, I just got the money to buy it." I would have worn it.
We would have been
proudly.
the only two people in the history of America walking, or in the world, walking around with shirts that said "Own your own shit" with a poop emoji on it.
I would have loved it. We need to make it happen.
But it's true, because I mean, that was the very first, one of the biggest things I ever learned from Jack Canfield, and I talk about this all the time, is taking responsibility, and E plus R equals O. How many people who follow me have heard me say that 800 times? You know, it is though, because we can't control anything. And so when we change our response or our reaction, we change the outcome. And that's a lot of like what happens when you go through an awakening, right? You become more aware of all these things, and you either get really sad or angry, like you were saying. But when you look at past things, like for you, your childhood was way different than mine. So when I woke
Yeah.
up, I was like, why would I choose to go through these experiences? Why would I choose to
Yeah.
be abused or neglected, or you know, to have parents that were going through their own turmoils, or to be bullied, or whatever the case may be, right? Everybody's got their stories. Why would I choose this? And it's not that we quote unquote chose that exact experience, but we did make a choice to come here and experience certain obstacles that we would be later on helping other people move through, that we needed to evolve our soul. But when we wake up, we're pissed because we look at what the government's doing, we look at what other people are doing, and we either get really angry or we get really sad, and or both. Sometimes we go through that cycle, like we grieve who we used to be. And so that requires us to move through those 4 stages, whether we are losing a physical, you know, grieving a physical death, or grieving that old self, that that skin that we're shedding, right? You still have to go through those phases.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that just because you shed it once that you're not going to shed it again, because it might just be a new layer.
Well, I actually have a new thing on that, and this is interesting because I do believe you're going to shed layers on some shit. Some stuff's just so big that I think it would be so detrimental to our health to go through it
Yeah.
all at once, right?
Probably.
But the other thing that is new that has come up this month for those that don't know, I took most of July off. I literally probably worked 10 hours or less a week. And July is always a huge transformational month for me. And I knew like what Tanya was going through, right? I knew that there was a chance that I was going to go through some heavy shit. And so I was like, I don't want to be promising to do all these things. So anyway, I totally got off track there. I don't even know where I was going with that.
We also seem to be in tandem a lot of times, even though we have different
Oh,
experiences. You and I
yes.
are in tandem with energy when we
Yeah.
go through some of this stuff. So
Well, different triggers, but
Yeah.
like the same type of scenario, it, is playing out. But God damn it, what was I gonna say? I hate
you're
that.
talking about taking the month off and about the layers, how you had a different theory on how.
Oh, yes, thank you. So
Mhm.
what they were showing me, because I had a client and a friend who asked me, she said, could you ask your people? And I love her. She's
Your
German
people.
too. The three of us need to get together because it's German.
Das German.
Yeah. So she said, could you ask your people why it is that we have to keep going through the same shit over and over again? Why I got to keep killing the same wound? And it was so funny because I never did like ask them, right? But just her bringing that up kind of like, so I'm in meditation one day and I come out after I had this experience where I'm literally feeling like I'm at this table with my people. And they're like,
I love it.
they're like, they said, this is their answer to that. You don't. But as Tanya and I once talked about on one of these damn shows was testing, right? So these experiences are going to keep coming. But guess what? You did not get wounded. You did not develop the wound of rejection with one incidence, right?
No, absolutely
This
not.
happened over, there was a root, and then it happened again, another way, and it
No,
built
that's
this
what. Yeah, I
hole.
mean, that was the whole point of bringing up the rejection I had with my friend, because that was not something that I ever felt that I had to clear. My rejection and stuff I always thought was family or childhood stuff that I was dealing with. And I'm like, where's my friend coming out of this? Why am I
Right.
clearing this? So yeah,
But
it's
it
just
is an
another form.
opportunity in that moment for you to choose to put your
Mhm.
tools into practice. And that's what they
Yeah.
were saying. Every time that happens, you're given a choice. And the more you choose,
Yeah.
you more that choose to put the new tools into practice, the more you don't have to do it anymore.
And it makes so much sense, like for me, because, even though this has a lot to do with my relocation and everything, but, my best friend is very similar to my friend right now. And that's who I relate to. That's my best friend. So to see that, is such a parallel. And I was like, oh, well, that's where that was. And that got cleared. But I was in much better spirits this morning, knowing that I can clear there. And I talk to Tanya all the time. So, I do listen to her, but, it's one of those things where you feel like you're not listening. I'm not being heard. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think that when you do clear some things up, it's different experiences or different elements of that. It's not just one entity. So I do think that's important to bring up. And the other thing that I think comes up, and I know this comes up in depression as well, but I really feel like, because I've been through, I go through depression, bouts as well. I also feel like what comes up a lot is, your lifestyle, how that changes. You have a really drastic lifestyle change, but your hobbies and the things that you used to enjoy, man, like the stuff I loved, I just had no joy in anymore.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I just lost joy. And there's still stuff that I'm like, I can't believe, like, I can't get back into certain things anymore. I used to be I'm a really big geek. I'm a pop culture nerd, and I was so into horror movies. I loved horror movies. Loved them. I can't watch them anymore. I tried. I'm like, nah, I don't want to watch it. Like a couple I'll watch into, but it's just weird. Like all of my likes when you can't find something that you find a joy in, you get this like, oh my God, what's happening to me? Because all of a sudden you don't have anything and you don't know where to go. Because it's like, you used to, try to get your mind out of these vibrations of what to escape to. And all of a sudden these escapisms aren't working anymore. It's like your mind like completely has a mind fuck on you and says, nope, you need to address some things that you really, really need to find yourself.
Right.
And I know that happened to me big time, big time. And I still have a hard time getting into certain things.
I've never been a horror movie person. I think it's because I was born on Friday the 13th. And so,
Oh yeah, that's
and
probably has a lot to do with it.
when I was a kid, I would have friends come over when I was little, and we would watch like Freddy Krueger and Nightmare on Elm Street. And my dad would come around in this stupid
I love
mask
those
he
movies.
had, and he would scare the crap out of us. And I was never into horror movies or anything. And I mean, obviously, being as sensitive as I am, I quit watching the news and scary movies and all that.
I never liked
Anyway.
the news to begin with, so that wasn't really a big loss
But
for me.
but there was things I liked that went away, like NASCAR. I was a huge NASCAR fan. I was a huge Kevin Harvick fan. I mean, I had been to a lot of tracks. I love it. And then, I just slowly stopped watching. I mean, it was like the world would stop on Sundays at time, everybody stop. We got to find a TV. We got to watch the race. And then it slowly started to kind of go away. And now we don't even have cable and stuff. And so I don't even watch the races. And
Isn't that crazy?
it's like I loved this sport. And now I'm like,
I was such a TV junkie. I mean, I loved everything from reality TV. I loved anything that was bantering or I loved all that shit, all that hokey shit. And I got rid of cable because I just didn't watch anything anymore. I just didn't watch. Nothing was interesting me anymore, unless it had something to do with a documentary or historical film. Like I was like, what's happening to me? Why all of a sudden am I like into history and shit? Like I always liked history, but I never really like got into it. Now I'm like an old 80-year-old now.
yeah, I'll watch stuff from Gaia TV
Gaia TV, I love.
Or I'll watch something on YouTube, or I'll read a book, or I'll listen to a channeling or something. But there's only a few shows that we still watch that's reality based, and Big Brother's one of them. And I still watch Big Brother, and I get
My
into
sister
it.
loved that show.
I feel like it's my 3D escape. But then I found myself the other day, we were watching it, and I was so mad because these people were grown ass adults were bullying other adults. And I was like, you would have thought somebody was bullying my child. I was in an uproar. I was so mad. I was like, how could they put this on TV?
Yeah. And I used to be I was always also the kind of person that I love bantering. I love bantering with people. So if someone had a different opinion on something, I always had to put my say in there. And I still like to banter. I still like to debate and stuff like that. It's something that's part of me, and it's just what I like to do. And it's not that I'm trying to prove my point or anything like that. I just like the banter, and I think sometimes people get so fucking serious on it. I'm like, oh, just relax. Like, can we just joke around kind of stuff? And I used to find myself like completely into that shit. And every once in a while I'll see it, or I'll see trolls, and I'll just kind of laugh. And then sometimes I find myself like completely intrigued and going back into what I used to do. And, there's no harm in all that kind of stuff. It's just that I'm more aware now of what I put out there or what I state, because I'm like, do I really want to put that out there, or do I really want to waste my energy on it? Like it's funny how I reflect a lot more. I reflect so much more. Or someone says to me, and I might not react right away. My first thing, I always was very reactive, or flip the switch and was pissed off or upset or crying. And I feel like I don't do, like, I have like this pause minute where I'll be like, okay. And then I'll pause and I'll reflect, and then I'll try not to actually say something right off the bat. And it's not because I'm like trying to, because I'm fearful of saying something. It's just because I get stuck in my head sometimes of like how that person might be feeling. And I'm going, why the hell do I care about what the person's feeling?
Right. Especially when it comes to you, because, there must be something with today, because I've seen so many people today, just today alone, posting about trolls and
oh yeah,
and worrying about what people think about them. And I can tell you that really, I can't say this enough. And when it's not your business what anybody else fucking thinks about you. It just isn't. It really isn't. And if you are going to if you're going to put any kind of weight on someone else's opinion, then you are doubting who you are, because you're the only one who knows your truth, and you're the only one, what you think about you is the only thing that matters. And I can say this with with a lot of weight behind it because I wore the mask for so long. I was so afraid of being seen without makeup on. I was so afraid of being seen crying. I was so afraid to be seen that I was a mess and that I didn't have my shit together. Right. And, now most of my clients see me in my pajamas with my hair on top of my head. I don't even care. I just don't. Right. I did an Instagram
Yeah.
video yesterday in my bed, for crying out loud, so I don't
Yeah.
always do that, but I'm not
Yeah.
doing that anymore.
I'm hypersensitive, so I can easily bring in the tears, and it's just natural for me. And I used to get very self-conscious about that when I was younger because people didn't like to see me crying. Don't cry, don't cry. You're not upset. Now I don't fucking care. Like, I'm
Right.
like, I'm crying, and it's what it is. I'm feeling. You're just gonna have to deal with me feeling.
Oh my, how many times I've cried on a Facebook Live?
Yeah.
I have to recompose myself. And I used to be like, oh my, because I grew up with the stop crying, get over it, pull your big girl panties up. And so you bury it. And I'm like, now we tell our kids, cry. We don't care. We're not going to stop you. Let it out.
And for the other thing is people, when you're going through this, you might start realizing that the people in your life aren't who you want to hang out with anymore.
Yep, I went through that too.
You just start fucking boundaries and setting things up and just letting things die because it's I don't know how to relate to you anymore. And then I know that what happened to me is I was getting stuck in friendships of people going, hey, remember when we do this? Remember this? Remember? I'm like, this is just a remember friendship. I don't even know why we're friends. All we talk about is remembering that. I'm like, how much can we talk about other than remembering how great something was?
Right.
Can we create new memories? Can we get past that? But some people just are so stuck on wanting to be in that. And I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want that. I hate small talk. I hate it.
Oh my
So
God.
if
Me too.
someone wants to be surfaced or have a surface friendship,
Fake.
fuck you. Bye. I
Right.
can't deal with it. If you tell me your day's good or it's bad, I want to know, I want to know if you're really into aliens. I want to know if you wear different colored socks in the morning. I like to know real shit.
Yeah,
I
you
like
guys would die if you knew some of the shit that Tanya and I talk about. We have no holds bar on our conversations. I mean, there's a few that's springing to my head right now where she's like, oh my God, TMI, right? But that's what, I was just telling someone today, I was like, that's what we want, right? We want the people
Yeah.
who will accept us in the most jacked up forms we get into, because that's true friendship right there, man.
Yeah, where they're just like, well, whatever. Just do your thing. And I've had I listen, I kept a lot of my close friends, and it's funny, the people who I ended up, who I'm still very close friends with are people that I would not assume that I would still be friends with today. And so a lot of them are my high schooler friends.
Yeah.
And I hated high school. I hated high school with a fucking passion. And yet I'm friends with, my closest friends are from high school.
Yeah,
So
no, I don't have a lot of friends. I don't, not in a physical space. And that used to really bother me. I used to always, that's the other thing is when you find yourself in an energy of distraction, right? So I always had to keep myself busy. I always had to be doing something. I felt like I needed all these friends and all these things. It was just so that I wouldn't have to be alone with myself. Right.
yeah, it's like
Right.
a fake persona.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to
Right.
face what you're going through and sit still and listen to your thoughts and feel
I had a lot of that too.
energy. But now I have, I have a very, very small group of friends, and 99% of them live in other states. And it's the best friendships that I've ever had. And I'm okay with being alone, because I'm not really ever alone. Right. But I dig it now. And because I'm good with sitting with myself. And so,
Yeah.
but
Me
when
too.
you're going through the dark night, or you're going through that time when you don't know who you are and you're uncomfortable and you're feeling some really weird crap, that's another thing is we can try to escape it, escapism or distraction. And I can't stress this enough. If anybody's going through the dark night, or you're feeling like you don't know who you are, you're feeling powerless, you're feeling hopeless, reach out to a friend, reach out to a mentor, reach out to anyone you can who will listen and hold space for you, like Tanya said, who's not going to try to fix you. You don't need someone who's going to try to fix you. You need someone who's going to hold space for you, who's going to love you, who's going to accept you and allow you to cry, and just allow for this to be a time where you get to figure yourself out. Think of it as a blank slate, a black chalkboard, brand new,
Mm.
and you get to create what it is that you want and how you want to feel and what you want to see, and start getting into the energy of creation and imagination, and not in a way of escaping, but in a way of tapping into your power and your heart. And that is the very best thing that you can do, is take that time to honor yourself. To what would you do if your child was going through that? What would you do if your child was hurting in that space? Would you force them to get better, or would you hold them and love them and talk sweet to them? Like, really think about
Unconditional
it.
love.
Right.
Unconditional love.
We are so hard on ourselves. It's like, that's a call to nurture yourself, right?
Mhm.
It's a call to love yourself. So
Yeah.
don't think of those times, even the short ones, right? Where we go through these moon cycles or 3-month cycles or whatever, where we go through those short bouts of time where we're like, nothing's good, everything sucks, whatever. That is a reset. That is the board's wiped clean. Take this time, rest, get back to the drawing board. What do you want now? Like, use that time. Like, that's what it's truly meant for.
Vicky says, what if somebody wants that deep relationship with you, but you don't want that with them, and it's your own mom who is sick? I want to keep her superficial.
Why? My question would be, what
Yeah.
is the purpose of keeping it? Because what I'm hearing right now is it's easier for you to have a superficial relationship because it won't hurt so bad.
Yeah. It's almost like a form of escapism.
Because I did the same thing.
Mm.
I pushed my dad away, turned into his nurse instead of his daughter, and kept the relationship very not deep. There was nothing deep there because I was so afraid of the pain that it would feel like when I lost him.
Mm.
It was easier to play the role. And if, we talk about, the things that we regret or we wish we could do differently, well, we can't, right? But I don't want you to have to face that feeling and have to move through that energy. So my suggestion would be is to face the fear of what's the real issue here. What are you really afraid of? Because the connection piece usually always comes back to fearing the pain of the loss of when that happens.
Yeah. It's that core thing that I was telling you about, that it always brings down to certain things, whether it's scared to be alone, or fear of death, or rejection or abandonment. Like, there's always a core. It always comes down to one core thing for you.
And all
Not
those
just
four
like,
things all are the same, really.
yeah,
If you think
really. They
about it.
are. Alone.
Yeah.
Separation.
Yep.
Separation is huge. I mean, this is all about unity within. So, that's what it's all about. So this saying, Dark Night of the Soul, a little history lesson. This saying was based on a poem by the 16th century Spanish mystic Saint John of the Cross. And I found a translation of it because, it was all in Spanish and shit. And I was like, well, you know what? I've never actually read the poem, and I read it, and it really stuck to me. And I'm going to read it. I would like to read.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. All right, here we go. I'm going to slam. I haven't done poetry slam in a long time. Once in the dark of night, inflamed with love and yearning, I arose, O coming of delight, and went as no one knows. When all my house lay long in deep repose, all in the dark went right. Deep down secret steps disguised in other clothes, O coming of delight, in dark when no one knows. When all my house lay long in deep repose, and in the luck of night, in secret places where no other spied, I went without my sight, without a light to guide, except the heart that lit me from inside. It guided me and shone surer than noonday sunlight over me, and led me to the one whom only I could see, deep in a place where only we could be. O guiding dark of night, O dark of night, more darling than the dawn, O night that can unite a lover and loved one, lover and loved one moved in unison, and on my flowering breast, which I have kept for him and him alone, he slept as I caressed and loved him for my own, breathing an air from redolent cedar blown. I'm not going to read all of it because it's got like 20 stanzas, but I wanted to get to that point because I thought it was really deep, but I also felt like that person found him.
He found the light within him.
Yeah, within.
He found his power.
Uh-huh. Found
That's
his power, and the
beautiful.
love and the caress that he had is probably his inner child.
Oh
That's how I
yeah.
read it.
Yeah, me too.
It's a really beautiful poem, and it's about 18 more stanzas. So you guys should check it out. We're gonna post a link on this afterwards for you guys to read it. But I thought it was a really profound way of describing it. I'm like, well, that's Dark Night of the Soul, and that's where it came from. That's where it originated. Was this
I
poem?
mean, it's perfect. It's beautiful because he's lost. He's going down. He's going down. He's in a staircase.
Yeah, in secret places where no other spied, I went without my sight, without a light to guide,
Yeah.
except the heart that lit me from inside.
And that's the beautiful part, because right there, that's when he found himself, is when he realized that light came from within, not outside of him.
And that's what this journey is all about. And I needed that reminder for sure tonight. And I wanted to remind everyone else. And I know Johanna did for sure. She was on board. She's like, I know this topic
Really well.
really well because I cover it all the time and, courses on it and so forth.
It's hard because I mean, and people don't understand. People don't understand when you're going through it, and it's okay for them not to, right?
Yeah.
It's really is okay for them not to understand, and you don't need to explain yourself. It's you just don't. I mean, but find somebody to talk to. It's amazing what happens when we speak out loud these things. And that was for me. The moment I said the words out loud, it was like it's like I had that omnipresent experience where I was watching myself say those words to my husband. And I was like, no, girl, you do not want to die.
It becomes way more real when you have that person that you can be completely authentic with.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm blessed that I have that and more, but it does not have to be. If you are really trying to find someone, there's so many people out there that are willing to listen and help you, whatever healer they are or so forth. But you don't feel you have to do it alone.
Mm-mm.
There's so many out there.
No, and that's why I'm glad that we talked about it, and to know that, and the other thing is don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of it, or going through these small bouts of those dark moments. Don't be afraid of it. Just change your perception of it, right?
Mhm.
Because we are so fixated on dark and alone and all of these things as negative, and they're really not. We just have to shift our perception just enough to open the door to possibility and opportunity, and say, is this a chance for me to start again, or to change things, or whatever the case may be, right? Maybe it's a time for us just to take a break, but we go through them. Tanya knows how many times I've gone through huge shifts where I just get so tired. Like, I am just like, beam me up, Scotty. Girlfriend is done. Right? It happens.
And the best advice I can give you is that you take the time to look yourself in the mirror and say, I love you. Because we don't do that enough. We don't do that enough. And sometimes we just need to look ourselves in the face and say that because that's what matters the most. Is that
I didn't start it, I love you. I started it, I like you. I might love you one day. Because I couldn't fake it, right? I couldn't fake it. And a lot of times you'll hear that fake it till you make it. And that can work for some people, right? It can work. But for me, I had to be real honest with myself. And I was like,
it's not prolonged.
No, I was like, I like you. I could love you one day. But I had to start somewhere. And there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah. All right. Well, here we are, another episode. If you guys like this episode, go ahead and hit the like button. We really greatly appreciate it. And please share. And if you are not following us, go ahead and hit that bell, click it. And sharing is caring.
I know we're almost to 100 subscribers, so I'm so
Yay!
excited about that. And we actually will also be starting to run, the replays have been loaded into the podcast
That's
land.
exciting.
Yeah. And so we're just waiting on good old fashioned Apple and iTunes to approve us, but we
Come
are
on,
on all-
iTunes.
I know. iTunes, come on, we're waiting. TikTok. We are on 6 other platforms. So if you're someone who's more into podcasts, you can search the Breakdown Radio on the podcast, and you should be able to find us on Google and a lot of the other ones.
Yep, we are there. Till next time. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye.